Hello, everyone. Heather Holmes here with KTV Fox 2 News in the San Francisco Bay Area. And once again, I am joined by Dr. Chotani, an infectious disease expert. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me again today on what is very big news from the FDA.
Yes, indeed it is. This is just a remarkable event that has happened today, as well as in the past few days. The studies that initially came out for Remdesivir from China were not very promising because that trial was halted a little earlier than anticipated because they just could not have enough patients recruitment in there. But the new study that has come out that NIH had sponsored, and another study that looked at the number of days that it took for individuals who were in critical condition or in hospital in intensive care to be able to get recovery. And there was a statistical significance seen in the time to recovery by using Remdesivir. And that is just remarkable news. And then today, just a few minutes ago, the announcement was made that now it is approved for FDA, approved for use by FDA. So that's just incredible news. We still need to see a lot more in terms of the studies and all that, but this is one incredible step, one incredible thing that has happened in the fight against COVID-19.
Explain a little bit more about why this is so important.
So right now, to be honest about it, there's nothing, right? I mean, we have no antiviral, we have no vaccine, we have nothing that we can use to fight against this particular disease. The only thing that we potentially could have used was plasmapheresis. We need multiple tools in the toolbox, and this is one of the tools in the toolbox that is certainly going to save some lives, decrease the time in terms of hospitalization, because one of the most important things is that if you have people that are staying less in the intensive care unit, and if you need more intensive care unit beds, and that's been a problem all across the world essentially, this becomes a game changer. Plus, if you see some decrease in the viral load of individuals, that becomes a critical game changer. It has been very effective in patients who are in critical condition. It yet needs to be seen if they will be effective, if this drug is going to be effective in patients who are who have moderate disease. Now, in China, most of the patients that were looked at were in moderate disease, and the results were not incredibly remarkable over there in regards to what we've seen in this new trial that FDA had sponsored, which was all across the United States and different parts of the world.
What is most promising when you take a look at those study results?
So the most promising thing for me when I look at that study right now is that people have recovered, and they have recovered quickly. That is a very promising factor in this particular crisis. We still have to do, as I said, more studies to see if it is effective in a moderately sick individual with COVID-19. We have clearly seen that the IV administration of this drug is extremely effective, which is the only way right now. Now, Gilead has invested a tremendous amount of money in this endeavor, and I commend them for that. But what has to be done is that we have to take a look at if there are other modes of administering the medication, such as subcutaneously or intranasally, like a puff, and so that it goes inside and kills the virus. It cannot be, I don't think it can be administered in the form of a pill, because if we do that, then it goes to the liver, and there is a problem in terms of some adverse reactions that have been seen with this medication earlier, and that would not be a good path. But subcutaneous and somehow if it was developed in some kind of aerosolized inhaler way, that could help deal with us. But we still need to have, and even Gilead says that this can be used in conjunction with other medications, and those other medications still need to be found, and some of them have been used, such as corticosteroids and other medications. So let's try to see what happens. But when you have complete darkness, right? A very good thing that has happened, then you have to be a little happy. And for me, today is a very happy day in that regard. We still have to do a lot of work, a lot of research, and trials and experience is going to tell us more as to how effective this drug is. A lot of physicians still are wondering if this is the right thing, because we have been kind of burned by getting one entity in and saying, okay, this might be the silver bullet for COVID-19, and it turned out it was not. But then this is science, and one has to appreciate the fact that if you find something, if you discover something that is good, you've got to give it a shot and see how it works. And sometimes it might not work, but right now we see a benefit, so let's use that and move forward with it.
And again, this is not about preventing COVID-19, but rather treating those who contract the virus.
Absolutely, absolutely. So prevention, again, is a critical thing, and that can be achieved once we have a vaccine. And the way the science is moving, and I mean, it's not that I'm saying it. If you observe how things have happened in the United States and things have happened around the world, and how scientists and companies have really, really ramped up the work that they're doing to fight COVID-19, it's warp speed. It is incredible. Gilead has spent probably about $1 billion on this drug already, and and if you unfortunately, if you take a look at their portfolio, it's not been very positive, but they have continued to invest it. They are going to be donating a tremendous amount of this medication to developing countries, because they cannot afford it. And the initial, something like 150,000 doses that they're going to give out, or maybe more, they have 1.5 million vials, which means about 150 doses for 10 days, I guess, 150,000 doses for 10 days. And they'll be giving that out to countries that need it. And we'll get more data, more information, and that is a good thing. But yes, we do need a vaccine, and that effort needs to continue. We do need other antivirals. That effort needs to be continued. And we've got to set up a lot of different things in terms of identifying the patients, doing the surveillance, etc. So the game is still big in terms of what we've got to play, but at least there is something that is working right now.
I want to talk with you about the efforts to create a vaccine. And we obviously know that some sort of shortcuts are being made. I mean, this is being fast-tracked, as you said.
Yes.
You mentioned warp speed. Are you concerned at all about the shortcuts that are being taken, and if it could impact the effectiveness or longevity of a potential vaccine?
Well, very, very important question. Yes. The shortcuts that have been taken have to be, there's a risk involved. There's no question about it. So traditionally, there are three phases. Phase after the animal studies are done, after you've got the investigational drug approval from FDA, you go into human trials. You select a small number of group of people to do a phase 1 study. You do a controls arm and a placebo arm, and then you find out if there are any adverse effects. You find out if that vaccine was efficacious. Then you do a phase 2 study in which you recruit a lot more people, and then ultimately a phase 3 study. Now, in between those studies, you've got to analyze all that information. You've got to analyze all that data. You've got to take a look at the safety as well as the efficacy of a vaccine. Because what is critical to understand is that if you administer, that's not going to be very useful. You also have to take a look at the efficacy. What is it that it's doing? Is it really making a serious change compared to the placebo arm that you're looking at, or not? So all of that has to be considered, and fast tracking it, doing phase 1 and phase 2 combined together, and then taking the patients from phase 2 and then following them for a X number of period of time to do the phase 3, yes, causes some concerns, not just to me, to a lot of people. But at this particular point, as I said, we are not going to get anything perfect, but I have total confidence in FDA and our scientists in the United States who are looking at all of this, that they will not take any adverse risks in order to do something quick and fast. So that's why I've been saying, yes, we have all these vaccines that are being, evaluated right now. Trials have started, but I still believe that is complete proof by FDA. If we do something earlier, then it would be just remarkable. But I think even if earlier it is done, then it is going to go through all the barricades that FDA has put forward in terms of evaluating something that is going to be good for the population. So it is going to take time. It is not going to be magic that is going to happen tomorrow, but we will have a vaccine, and I have complete faith in that we will be able to produce something that is going to be good for, not just the United States of America, for the rest of the world. We're also looking at other vaccines that are being developed across the globe and seeing if they are going to be something, because some of them, China, Britain, and a few other countries have had an advantage in terms of putting something together a little earlier. We'll see what happens over there. So let's see which is the best one, and we will take a look at it in the United States and probably use it, whichever, whether it's the US manufactured vaccine or it's a vaccine that's manufactured someplace else, because that is what is needed.
You and I have spent a lot of time talking about testing, and is the United States doing enough of it? What are your thoughts now after a couple of weeks of following things? Where do you see the US in testing? And also, what about contact tracing?
So both are very, very important and critical questions, because if we are not going to do testing, we will not know what the baseline of this disease is. And if we don't know what the baseline of this disease is, we will not be able to clearly identify what are the preventive measures that need to be taken and all the other things that go along with it, hospitalization, hospital beds, ICU beds, etc. So we have to do testing. Testing is still not at par with what most of us would like to see, but we are moving in that direction. We've got, a lot of effort has been made for the PCR testing, and now availability is becoming easier. And even if you ask all the legislators on both sides of the fence, they will agree that it's not as to where we want it to be, but we are moving in the right direction. As far as the antibody testing is concerned, antibody testing, there are a few FDA-approved antibody tests that are out there now, which is a remarkable thing for FDA to do in a short period of time, and evaluating a lot more of these kits to see if they can be they can come out in the market and people can start using it. Right now, there is a slight issue with the use of the antibody kits because it's a rapid 10-minute test, and there apparently is a discussion that this has to be done in a lab which doesn't have which is higher than a normal CLIA certified lab. So it's moderate or high CLIA lab, and that is an issue that most of the clinicians are facing, because now they cannot do the test in their clinics because none of them have the high intensity labs that is being required by CDC or FDA for this testing. This test is a point-of-care diagnostic, so it cannot be sent to a lab, and it has to be done in a clinical setting, as I've always advocated. So still discussion is going on that, and we'll see how that happens. Now, your next question was regarding contact tracing. Now, contact tracing is paramount in terms of dealing with this problem, and I have to say that at least working with people in California that I've been working with, I've been impressed with the effort that they are putting into this endeavor, and other states are doing the same thing. We have a clear picture and roadmap as to how many people would be needed for each state, each county, each city, health department to do contact tracing. And how are we going to get those people? One of the recommended process for that is to get individuals who are already government employees who are not working and train them. It's a very simple process to do contact tracing. Get teachers who are not fully employed right now or have time to do that. Get volunteers, get medical students, get nursing students, get graduate students to volunteer and do that stuff. The federal government has released a pretty decent amount of money to be allocated for contact tracing to all the health departments. And unfortunately, I don't think it's enough. I think we need more help. But again, we're moving in the right direction. And most of the organizations the U.S. organizations have come up with guidelines as to how many contact tracers would be needed per population based on experiences in China, based on other experiences. And we have a pretty good handle on that. If the funding comes through, if the health departments comply with all the requirements, then this can be done. But it will take time because we just don't, first of all, we did not have the people. Second of all, and we still don't, not all of them. And then there were no resources. Now there are resources, and there's a serious effort in recruiting those people. So in the next next couple of weeks, I think most states are going to, and county and city health departments are going to start doing their contact tracing themselves in a much better way than before. Now there are apps that have come out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a particular app that has been identified, which so phones, because of privacy issue, become a problem. So Bluetooth has taken over in many ways, and one app particularly uses a Bluetooth and then identifies people if they come in close contact with each other. And then if one individual is identified and has been tested positive for COVID-19, then they're requested to put their information in the app, and then anybody who has been in touch with that individual in X number of days and has spent over 15 minutes with that individual will be then contacted. So that is an incredible app, I believe, and it's being used in Australia and New Zealand, and various other countries have different apps very similar to it. And I think those are the technologies that are going to be critical in terms of usage for contact tracing and decreasing the burden, and citizens working together can somehow deal with this also in a very effective way.
Yeah, let's hope. I want to move on and talk now about the U.S. food supply chain and concerns about what's available and what will be available in the coming weeks. Your concerns about that, especially as more of the meat processing plants reopen.
Yes, and I'm extremely concerned about the meat processing plants because when the people work over there, they work in close proximity. It's very difficult for them to maintain the social distancing. So one of the critical things that I think it's a logical thing to think about. If all of them were tested and cleared and then went to work, and there was a methodology in terms of checking their temperature and then doing serial testing on them in terms of COVID-19, then the individuals working there would be much more comfortable. I think the critical problem right now is not that the meat plant owners don't want to open up the facility. I think it is the workers who are not feeling safe when they go over there to work over there, because then they have to go back home and they want to take an infection back home and infect their families. Mm-hmm. So let's try to figure out a way to make them comfortable by either doing antibody testing or doing the PCR testing. It really, for me, doesn't matter. As long as we do the testing and figure out and clear people who either have never been infected, who are infected and cannot work over there, or people who have now gone through the infectious cycle and now, I'm not going to say immunity because that's become a very kind of tough word, and because the WHO has come out and said no immunity passport, etc. But what I'm going to say is that they've recovered from the disease. So those are the three critical factors: whether you have the disease, whether you have never been exposed to the disease, or whether you have recovered from the disease. Now we have enough science and technology to be able to say that. If we can do that for our employees, if we are manufacturers or whatever we are doing, especially in the food industry, because it concerns me. Because if we do not have, you've seen how many chicken and pigs and cattle and milk has been just discarded. That is just not right, because we just cannot do that. And then, the prices are going to go up, and people are not really employed at this point. There's an economic dilemma that we are going through. And with all that happening, if we have a problem with our food supply, then it becomes a catastrophe for people who cannot afford, and those are the people that we have to care about. Those are Americans that we've got to think about, and not because of their socioeconomic status say, well, we'll see what happens. For me, that is the population that we've got. If we've been blessed, in all honesty, and I'm going philosophical over here, if we've been blessed, right, as Americans, as humans, it's our duty to be able to help the people who are in difficulty, and creating these difficulties is not what we should be doing. We should be finding solutions for them.
Okay, one final topic before I let you go, and I hadn't really given much thought to this, and that is sort of the hidden impact on those who want to pursue a medical profession.
Yes.
Those who, before COVID-19 were thinking that, a medical career was for them. Talk a little bit about how this might impact future decisions to take on, a career in medicine.
Absolutely. And, this is a very important question. There are two things that we have to consider: whether a person is going to be thinking about going to medical school after all of this, the risk involved, and the number of healthcare workers who got the disease and the healthcare workers that have died. They have been, they have received accolades. They have been called heroes. But, think about their families. The families have been affected and scarred for life, which is true. So the next generation is going to think about some of those things and say, well, this might be, if COVID continues and causes the same kind of havoc, and it goes on for a couple of years, as now is being clearly said by the leading authorities, then there is going to be a problem for people, except the ones who are completely dedicated to humanity and have nothing to do with the monetary value of being a physician. On top of that, once you graduate, you've got to pick what specialty you're going to go in. Right now, it is very clear that people who are in certain specialties, like surgeons and anesthesiologists, cardiac surgeons, people who have to intubate are working disease. So, if they go into medicine, try to find a safer path where they don't have to take all those risks. So those are things that we have to think about, because, we already, and, I'm one of the examples. I was born in Pakistan, right? And there are so many people from so many different countries that come to the United States and go into the field of medicine, because we just don't have enough people already in our system to deal with everything that we've got to deal with. Now, if in the United States there are people that are thinking about coming from outside. So those are the things that we have to think about in terms of strategies for our nation. And it's imperative that we not forget about it, because those problems will come, in my opinion, and we might have a problem with enough physicians American physicians being out there to deal with regular health problems and issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sort of the long-lasting effects of COVID-19. Dr. Chotani, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Stay safe and have a nice weekend.
And you do the same, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.